I've never intentionally been to Art Basel. I think I've been in Miami one weekend that it happened to be Art Basel. But can we talk about the other sort of douchey festivals that pretend to be about something else, but they're really poserish? Meaning, I hear that real art collectors are not buying at Art Basel because they've already bought or they've already seen, because once Art Basel comes in, it becomes picked over. So you're there to be a douchebag. You're literally there to name drop and pose and say, I'm going down for Art Basel. And these types of things annoy me so. I don't love going to things if they don't have something to do with me. It's always been my thing. Every year I'll get invited to one or two fashion events that I could sit front row at. And the only time I ever went to Fashion Week was when Pamela Rowland invited me, and it was something to do for the housewives. So that was a thing that we did, but I didn't love that because it was not truthful. I have nice clothes. I wear nice clothes, but Fashion Week doesn't really have anything to do with me. It doesn't. I don't like to pretend that it does. It is a cool experience, but it's sort of like there's a pretentiousness to not being involved, and it must annoy the people who are really involved to see the superficiality of what it's become too, where it's a celebrity fest. And I guess that's what Art Basel's become, and Coachella, because isn't Coachella the musical version where, yes, there's amazing music there, but aren't young girls just, and I know my assistant would call them thoughts. I don't even know what it means. I think it means like young girls that go to Coachella, effectively. They all say that word. I don't know what it means. Deep thoughts. I don't know. It's like young girls that, I don't know, that go to Coachella, I guess. But don't they all just go there to wear like crossbody suede fringed satchels and like earthy, wavy, like 70s, 60s hair and act cool? Do they really know the music they're listening to? I don't know why. It just really is just not my personality. So Art Basel falls under that. And there are other things too. It's Art Basel, Coachella as well. Oh, Burning Man. That sounds like a land of douchebaggery and posery. But I don't know. I haven't been to any of them. I went to Lollapalooza one year. It was in Chicago. It was on a lawn. And my ex is a photographer, so we went. And I went to the Victoria's Secret fashion show with him and different events like that with him. But I would always feel inauthentic because it's like, I know I'm not supposed to be here. It doesn't have anything to do with me. I'll stay in my own lane and go to the things I'm supposed to go to. Like when I got invited to the Emmys, it was not a reach because I had a TV show coming out, and I am on TV. But going to the Grammys is a little bit of a reach unless I'm announcing something or doing something. So I don't know why. I just never for me. But the Kentucky Derby would be relevant because I grew up at the racetrack. That is douchebaggery for others, but not douchebaggery for me. So there's some douchebaggery that doesn't apply to me. I used to go to Sundance. I used to host Chef Dance. Paul's produced a bunch of independent films. So Sundance, another festival that was very, very cool and authentic when it started and got douchey. I don't know what it is now, if it's still douchey, because independent films aren't the same as they used to be, and the film industry isn't exactly what it used to be, but it used to be very commercial at its peak. But I would have some reason to be there because I have a history there, because I snowboard, and because Paul's produced movies. So let me know about your perception of these douchey events. My guest today is MediaLink Chairman and CEO Michael Kassan. He's a legend in the advertising and marketing industry. He led Initiative Media Worldwide as the COO and Vice Chairman from 1994 to 2001 and helped grow the company's initial $1.5 billion in billings nearly tenfold. In 2019, Michael was even inducted into the American Advertising Federation's Hall of Fame. Michael has his own podcast on iHeart, Good Company, where he talks to the biggest players in the industry. But today we get to hear his own story firsthand. You are going to love this conversation, and there's a lot of takeaway for you and how to market your business. Okay, so most of the listeners will not know who you are and know what your company does. So you're a different type of guest, but interesting for sure. And nevertheless, I like to have different types of people on, corporate people, mavericks, entrepreneurs, and people who have really sort of climbed through an industry. So you're an ad man, is that correct?
Well, yes. I mean, MediaLink is a media advisory firm. Uh, I grew up in an interesting, different kind of careers, but for the last 29 years, I've been in the advertising media marketing industry. I ran the largest media agency in the world at the time, and then I started MediaLink about 16 years ago. And, we're the leading media consulting firm in the industry, I think, immodestly. So, yes, I wouldn't say ad man, but, media, media man more than ad man.
But media man, that's evolved because it used to be about advertising and it's evolved into media because that whole entire landscape has changed.
Yeah, let me give you a hand. The way I describe MediaLink is we're a media or a firm that lives at the intersection of marketing, media, advertising, entertainment, and technology as they all come together. So if you were to describe it, you could say something like that. Just so it's not just media, it's not just marketing, it's entertainment, it's technology. You may forget all of those, but if you said marketing, media, advertising, technology, and entertainment, those you'd remember, and that's the way we describe the firm.
Yeah, well, messaging and connecting. You're in the business of messaging and connecting to the consumer.
Absolutely, very much. The name of the firm, MediaLink, had something to do with connectivity.
Yeah, so how have you been able to keep up with what's going on and how to know how to really still reach a customer and how to advise brands that pay you and how to tell an average person who has a small business, who's a lot of the people who listen here are budding entrepreneurs and they want to know they can't afford a publicist, they're not great at social media, they're not they're not a TikTok influencer. How do you get the messaging across when there's so many messages and it's so crowded now, way more than it used to be?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's the opportunity in front of us. That's what MediaLink attacked when I founded the firm. We saw that whether small businesses or local, what we call SMB, small and medium-sized businesses, no different than large companies. If you're a big company and you're used to advertising on television on a commercial break, and the world has gone to streaming, you have just as much trouble or challenge as Pete the plumber or Sally the hairdresser, who's got to figure out how to get the message across, with a better utilization of social media or whatnot. I mean, Bethenny, the truth is, Google and Facebook, somewhere in the range of 80% of their revenue comes from small and medium-sized businesses. Sure, L'Oreal and Procter and Gamble and General Motors spend money, but the majority of the money that is generated by Google and Facebook and the like, and TikTok and are small, medium-sized businesses that they can't ever have afforded a 30-second commercial on, network television or cable, but they can use social media. And so those are some of the things that we address, obviously, yes. So you could go down that road and we could talk about that and how the small and medium-sized businesses, which you say comprise a good deal of your listeners, they would understand that from the context of utilization of social media.
My question to you about the inauthenticity of a lot of social media and the change that so many people have made to lean into it as an advertising tool, as a marketing tool, as a PR tool. How is it not getting so crowded with all of the messaging all day long that it cancels each other out, like that brands aren't able to be heard? How is it possible that there are so many messages going on, so many more than we used to have, and that we're still able to absorb all this content information?
Well, the job of a marketer, Bethenny, or those people who help create the messages, is to make sure yours stands out. To be honest, we've always had a cacophony of messages. And you had to, if you think of just watching a television show, and a commercial break happens and there's 4 ads in that break, how do you make sure yours is the one that stands out? And many times it can be 3 different car companies and a drug manufacturer, and then you've got to make sure your car ad stands out against the other ones. It's no different than we've done, and an entire industry sprung up around search engine optimization or social media optimization to make sure that you utilize and take advantage of the algorithms that can get your message to the top. It's not a surprise when somebody types in margarita, your name might come up, okay? Because it's been optimized. That's a business to make sure that when I type in margarita, your name comes up.
Oh no, I know. Believe me, when you could type in shapewear and it'll come up. You could type in Skinnygirl shapewear and other brands will come up because they've taken sort of the association of my brand for them. And I find it to be.
Well, listen, that's a truth. And if you think about product placement, if you think about the idea of having a Coca-Cola can on the table in a movie or a show, or having an Apple computer, or whatever it might be, that is historically what's always happened, because what you're doing is you're borrowing the celebrity one from the other. You're taking a brand that is a celebrity in some way, and you're making it either to make it more authentic or to focus on that brand, and you're making it cooler. And so that
Yeah.
is no different than you do with talent. By having your association, people are drawing off and drafting off of the cool factor of Bethenny Frankel. So that's the quid pro quo that people want to do. That's why you use endorsements. That's why people ask you to endorse a product, or your product is utilized to make somebody feel current or cool or of the moment.
Where are people absorbing and consuming most of their content now? I meaning, where is the most effective means of getting the advertising message through? Is that on social media? Is that on streamers? Is it integrating products into a show now? I mean, is the Super Bowl less valuable than it used to be, or is it more valuable because there aren't that many commercials on? I mean,
Super Bowl is very valuable because it's when everybody focuses on it. And it is the one time that people are not going to get up to go to the bathroom or do something else during the commercial breaks on the Super Bowl. They might get up during the game, but they'll sit down during the commercials. It's kind of an oddity, but it's true. Mm-hmm. And the other time you have that is probably on the Academy Awards. And if you're to believe that award shows still have a presence and an importance and a relevance, yeah, those places are the places where people are going to pay attention to the commercial messages, because it's part of the sort of je ne sais quoi of the football game today in the Super Bowl. But on the other hand, I think it's clear, if you look at the amount of revenue that's generated by Facebook and Google through advertising, that seems to be the place people think you're going to get the most bang for your buck, is in social media, because, again, generally speaking, we reached a point where commercial avoidance was the moment that people wanted. And I believe that the moment you created the remote control for television, you put commercial avoidance at the top of everyone's list. Because the moment you didn't need to get up to change the channel, but you could sit there and flip the channel while the commercial was on, that's what most people tend to do. And that's the thing you want to avoid. There's a famous old saying in advertising, which has been around for more than 100 years, and it was something that, if you remember, you wouldn't remember, but you probably know the name Wanamaker's. It was a department store chain back in the 100 years ago in Philadelphia and New York and on the East Coast. And John Wanamaker famously said, 50% of my advertising dollars are wasted. I just wish I knew which 50%.
Right. That's sort of what I'm saying to you, breakthrough messaging. And people really don't know where to be spending their money. For example, I just said to my assistant today, she was talking about this TikTok influencer who has 8 million followers. And I said, okay, but, and I know some of these influencers who come to me to ask me how to maximize their 15 minutes. And I'm thinking, you have 8 million followers. Like, I'm assuming somehow they're monetizing it and making money, but I don't exactly know how. I'm sure brands are saying, pour my salad dressing over your salad, but that's not a real monetization. So I'm wondering, okay, so you're a TikTok influencer, you have 8 million followers. How are you converting that? So, if I post on Instagram and I only get a few likes, but I'm posting just for the information that we're doing relief work right now in Kentucky, just so people know what we're doing, but it doesn't get that many likes, does that mean that people aren't going to donate as much? Or, if I get so many likes because I'm wearing a bathing suit, does that mean people are buying more products? I don't really know exactly how it's working.
There is definitely correlation. Okay, there is definitely correlation. If you were photographed in your Christmas reindeer outfit, that's going to influence people. I've got that sweater with a reindeer. I should have been wearing. Yeah, I mean, or gee, I'd love to get it. I'd love to find that. I mean, obviously, that influences people's purchase decisions, and the way that monetization happens if you're an influencer is either you create your own brands, as you did, or you're endorsing someone else's brand. That's the way you monetize it. You either have to create your own. Look, the greatest example.
Wait, but before you, but what I'm saying is it doesn't always convert. So I was on Bravo, which is a small audience, and it's the demo, which we'll talk about in a little bit, what the demo is and who's buying and who people want. But it was 18 to 49, 4 years plus college, $250,000 a year. That's who's watching. Small audience, 1.5 million viewers. Okay, and I had the fastest growing liquor brand in history at the time. I went and had a talk show every single day on network television, syndicated show, talked about the cocktail, talked about all my products, didn't move the needle at all. So people think that many things are working and they're not. So if I'm making a salad and using the dressing, it doesn't necessarily mean that people are buying dressing. That audience may already know I have dressing. So they may be sick of hearing about dressing. They may, it's very hard to stay on the pulse of what's going on at all times with what you are talking about and selling. And I see people badgering people with it. And that's why I mentioned the online purchases I made, that I'm being badgered with discount codes on my email, and I don't want to buy from these brands anymore. So I think that there's a line between the 50% that's working and 50% that's not. I don't think most small businesses really know. The weirdest thing will affect your sales.
Well, but there's, what's interesting is they actually do know, Bethenny, because they check it out every day on the cash register. Let me give you an example. And I don't want to get too granular because it's kind of complicated technologically, but there's been an ongoing battle, if you will, between Apple and Facebook in this past year on cookies and the ability to have, advertisers be able to actually know what people are doing. And Apple put down the gauntlet and said, we're not going to let people track that way anymore. And that had a massive impact on the small and medium-sized businesses whose lifeblood of marketing was Facebook.
Right.
And without some of the data that tells you where you need to go to get to Bethenny as a consumer, Facebook could become less effective. And I've heard many small advertisers, I mean, we don't advise a lot of small advertisers, but I've heard many small advertisers say that the deprecation or the less value of the cookie technologically has had direct and clear impact on their advertising and their ability to generate revenue. So small businesses actually do see it because they know the uplift they get in business, or when it's not working, they see that business is down.
Yeah, but I'm saying sometimes it's a crapshoot. It's the weird it's something that you wouldn't have expected. And I want to know who do you think who's the most key customer right now? Who do people really want to be speaking to? Is it the younger generation because they want to keep them and nurture them and bring them with them as a brand? Or is it the purchasers of the households, the wives, etc.? Obviously, I know it depends upon the product, but where's the sweet spot? Who should people be talking to?
Yeah, the holy grail for most marketers always has been that hard to reach demographic of the young consumer, again, depending on the product, but also to your point. what the consumer packaged goods companies have learned is, the woman is the one making more decisions about purchases than the man, if you will, in terms of a family. So get to mom, or get to the woman. It doesn't necessarily have to be a mom, but get to the woman. She's the one making the decisions about those kinds of purchases. Not good to send me the message, because I'm not going to be the person going to the supermarket or online to purchase the goods. So, you go after that demo. The challenge on the younger demo, and this is an important point, is they're fickle. And the challenge on the younger demo is, I've always said, when you find them, it may be too late. They have to find you. Because when you finally get to that demo on Facebook or whatever the medium might be, they're already moving on to the next one.
They're on to the next thing. It's interesting. And it's also interesting that, it has been a long time for women to be really recognized in equal pay and equal in business. And I think it was Warren Buffett who said we're leaving half of our team on the bench by not really focusing on women, particularly if women are making the purchasing decision. So women are running the business effectively. They're so influential, and it's such an interesting conversation and construct with men being the real business people and women not being taken seriously, because they should be taken so seriously, particularly in this context.
I do believe marketers look at it that way. Now, you could say, look at how much money marketers spend in sports. And are you going to say that generally, if it's football, perhaps, versus tennis, I'm not saying that specifically, I'm just making the point. Are you going to attract more male viewers or more female viewers? You've got to look at it through that lens too. My bet is in football, you're going to attract more male viewers. And maybe in golf, I'm guessing you're going to attract, I do know, you're going to attract more male viewers. But in gaming, the surprise has been there's a lot more women gamers than people initially thought. So you can reach women in gaming, not just young guys, who are gamers. There's a high percentage of gamers that are women, and marketers realize that. So you're going to find products that might be targeted to women showing up more in gaming than you might have guessed. On paper, you'd go, oh, well, that must be, grungy gamers hanging out, and no, you're going to find the demographic is much more diverse than you thought.
Yeah.
And look, we have the same challenge, Bethenny, on diverse audiences. Where do you reach those diverse audiences? Do you reach a black audience on BET, or do you reach a black audience on ABC? And then or both, obviously, and do you reach a Hispanic audience, a Latin audience on Univision, or do you reach them on general market? You're going to reach them in both places. Where is the predominant, grouping? So those are the kinds of decisions that media strategists help marketers make.
And also, where do you break through in that? You could reach them in both, but there might be so much other messaging that you might not be able to break through in one place. That's why it's true. You have to be very innovative and look at the landscape and look what other people are doing. And sometimes you do have to throw the spaghetti at the wall when you're marketing.
Well, exactly. And you hope, you said it cleaner than I would. You hope it sticks. You said spaghetti. I might have said something else, but you throw it against the wall and hope it sticks.
What have your biggest wins been in your career? Your biggest financial, wins, I guess, business investments, and what have your biggest media ideas been? Your biggest wins, and then your biggest failures and mistakes, things that you just missed.
My biggest win was when I met my wife and married her. That was my biggest win.
Okay, well, that's nice.
Maybe the biggest win was when we had our kids and grandkids. That's the biggest win for me.
Well, career we're talking about.
Career-wise. When I transitioned into the media business back in the early 90s, because I'm old, just to put it out there, I'm 71 years old. So I started when I was pretty old in the media business. I had practiced as a tax lawyer for 10 years, and then I was running a home video company back in the mid-'80s, at the time the largest independent home video company, and then I transitioned into the media advertising marketing business when I was in my early 40s. So that's not...
Oh, wow.
kind of, gee, I started there and I was
Yeah.
43 years old when I came into the media marketing and advertising business. Now, professionally as a lawyer, I had represented companies in that business, so I understood the business, but as a lawyer, not as a practitioner. So I made that
Mm-hmm.
transition kind of at what some would consider my midlife. I'm a believer that I'm going to live to 120. So I'm just passing midlife.
Mm-hmm.
Reasonably speaking, and optimistically. But I would say the biggest career win for me was the founding of MediaLink uh, 17 years ago, and I was able to accomplish something that I didn't think was doable, which an idea that I had on the back of an envelope really turned into a business that today is a preeminent player on the field, as I would say the leading, immodestly, the leading media strategy boutique in the world. And we had a great moment 4 years ago when we sold the company to a British based public company called Essential. And that was a pretty successful journey for me, and one that I'm still very much on.
They wanted you in. They wanted to keep you.
Oh yeah, and they weren't getting rid of me. Uh, you know, they'll kick me out with I'll be the last person to turn the lights off. I learned a long time ago, Bethany, that if you enjoy what you do, work is not a four-letter word. And I really enjoy what I do, and therefore I hope I can continue to do it as long as they laugh at my jokes.
And what has been your biggest miss? There's something you just didn't see, something you didn't catch, something someone did, and you just hit yourself on the head and said, "What the hell? How did we not do that?"
Oh gosh, if you look at that through the lens of investment, what was the biggest miss in an investment? I sold Amazon stock way, 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 way too early. I was
Oh,
somebody
okay.
who, at the beginning, owned a fair amount of it in the early 2000s, very early 2000s, and I believed in it, but I was able to be talked out of it by someone said they'll never make a profit. And by the way, there were a lot of people who said that. And the Amazon stock, everyone I know has that story of coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Mm-hmm.
That's one that I can point to and say, my gut was right, and I allowed my gut to be second guessed by others. And I said, you may be right. This may be one of those that doesn't ever see the light of day. And, I'm not crying about it, but it's
Mm-hmm.
one that I know I was there, I was in
Mm-hmm.
it, and I got out of it.
Wow, it happens, right?
Yep,
Um, do you read endless amounts of information? I
I
can't
do.
imagine
I
you
do.
have to. Don't you have to know so much?
Well, it gets to management style as much as it does curiosity for me. I stole an expression from a good friend of mine, a woman by the name of Wendy Clark, when she described herself, and she's a very senior executive in the advertising industry. She runs Dentsu, which is one of the large advertising agencies globally. And Wendy, and I give her full credit for this, described herself, which I stole, but I give her credit, so it's not stealing because I told her.
Mm-hmm.
She described herself, and I described myself as a micro knower, not a micro manager. I like to know a lot. I like to know everything I can. I don't have to make every decision for everyone, and I don't have to manage everything, but that goes to my thirst for knowledge and reading and understanding. So I do read a lot, and I read a lot of varied opinions so that I can then kind of conflate and bring them together into what my opinion's going to be. But I need those inputs, and so I do. I'm a voracious reader, full stop.
That's what this podcast is. It's listening to so many different, very successful business people, moguls that are so varying in their success, from Dave Portnoy to Matthew McConaughey to Hillary Clinton. I mean, Mark Cuban. And people then create their own toolbox. You're listening to so vastly different ways of doing business and then finding things that you see in these people.
We've all had mentors of some sort or another. I'm a big believer in that. I happen to be on the board of Big Brothers Big Sisters the national organization, because I'm a big believer in mentoring. And I mentor people every day of my life, and I know how important it is, especially when you're looking at really young people, which, the big brothers, big sisters are dealing with, kids all the way up through college and beyond, but certainly it's most important at those ages. And I'm a big believer in that. And you learn from people at all stages. I can learn as much from the receptionist in a company as I can from the CEO if I pay attention. I may learn different things, but I learn a lot from people.
I don't read a fraction of what you do. But I am a crowdsourcer of information. I'm always listening. I'm always watching. I'm a crowdsourcer of information, and I'm an idea hamster. That's sort of my thing. Like you said that you're a micro knower. I'm an idea hamster. So what did you think of the Peloton? A couple of things. What did you think of Peloton not putting that clause in that says you can't disparage the brand, even though we're so excited that you're including it in the next version of Sex and the City, that had to happen. I've been through this where, it's tempting and it's rushed and it's a contract. You can't include a brand in something if you don't know the context. So what'd you think of that?
Yeah. Well, I think, look, I'm a big fan of Peloton. John Foley, the founder, CEO, is a good friend, and personalizing it, his wife grew up with my daughter and went to junior high and high school with my daughter. So I know his wife since she was 12 years old, and I'm a big fan of John's. And that's the danger. The old joke is any press is good press. And we all know that that's not always the case, certainly. And we also know we're in a world where, we could walk down the woke world stuff, but we're in a world where what you once thought would land a certain way doesn't land that way anymore. And I will talk about that with the context of humor. I was blessed with a father who was an extraordinarily witty guy who, was successful in his chosen field, but what he should have done is stand-up comedy. He was that good. And, I inherited that, and it's one of the greatest gifts I ever got, was to be able to turn a phrase with some humor attached to it and tell a good joke and kind of look at life through a lens of not everything's funny, but try to find the humor in everything. Even in sadness, you can find humor, and it's a good medicine, if you will. And I've said for the last few years, as we look at this world we live in today of being so politically correct, and appropriately so in many cases, but I say, look, I grew up with a father who would tell a joke about anything. And one thing I knew for sure, he never, ever once told a joke that was intended to be anything other than funny. It wasn't intended to hurt your feelings. It wasn't intended to make you feel bad. It was intended to be funny. But that doesn't work anymore, because what we say, we all have learned words matter and words can hurt. So even if you think they're funny, the person receiving it might not. And the sensitivity of people is at such a fever pitch now that you can't say anything. I will tell you a story. As we got on this conversation,
I'm going to disagree with you in a minute, so I want to hear what you have to say. When
we got on this conversation, is it okay in the world we live in today for me to comment on what you're wearing? Because I think it's adorable and I think it's holiday season. Or have I crossed the line, and is that not appropriate conversation?
Here's the thing that I think. It's funny that you said, because I've been thinking about all press is good press lately more than ever, because I don't agree. I don't like that feeling. I don't like teetering on the edge of cancellation. I'm an edgy person. I speak my mind. We've had a lot of issues discussed on this show, and they've gotten picked up in the press. And I've thought for my whole career, speak when you really have something to say, but I'm not really interested in being written about in a salacious way, and I don't mess with the press because they're like the ocean and you can get whacked in a bad series of waves, and you don't cozy up to the press. They're a vehicle, and it's great for when you want to talk about something, but you're not interested in being in there at any cost.
What I would say, Bethenny, is what I always learned is a reporter, when they're doing their job, you can't be friends with a reporter.
No.
You can be friendly, but you're not friends, because when a reporter's doing their job, they can't be looking at it through the lens, well, that's my friend, I don't want to say that. So you should always know that when you deal with the press, they're not your friend, they're doing their job. But if you're friendly, you could get the benefit of the doubt, but That's just good advice. People should
It goes
if
both
then you can
ways.
listen to that and learn from that.
It cuts both ways with that. But so my thing is, recently I've been thinking, not for myself because it's not for me, but that all press seems to be good press with the way society has been. So if you think about it, anybody who's teetered on the edge of cancellation, for the most part, with the exception of, rape or going to jail or the threat of going to jail, like really bad stuff, everybody who's teetered on the edge of cancellation, this pendulum swings right back. Okay, the pendulum swings right back because someone is, it's discussed their body image or something about them, and then all of a sudden they change that and they have a comeback, or someone says something terrible and they've learned from their mistakes, or they were drinking and now they're recovering. They get to have that be a moment. And I feel that everyone keeps talking about cancellation is real. It doesn't seem to be that real. It seems to be people get canceled, they have their mea culpa, and because of all this information that is being digested and processed so quickly in social media, it turns. Give me some people that know. Because I could say that Nick Cannon, Jewish comment, he's back. He's back. Chrissy Teigen issue, she came back. More followers, more engagement, more famous. I can't think of anybody besides a Harvey Weinstein or a Matt Lauer. I can't think the Bill O'Reilly. I can't think of that many. Most people swing right back.
Famous people have a different set of facts than people who are not famous. You're talking about the examples of the more famous people who can apologize and get that second chance.
Yep.
The less famous people are getting canceled in ways that they can't come back.
Because they're liabilities and they're not worth the risk.
And they're not worth the risk. It's exactly right.
I also think that if it's a situation where someone proclaims to be flawed or isn't perfect, like a Chrissy Teigen who's self-deprecating, or Nick Cannon, their comeback can be more easily digested because they've never said that they're so perfect or so good. I think people paint themselves into the perfect corner and then they do something wrong and people just want to pull them right down. It's just a very interesting dynamic.
Bethenny, are you familiar with the concept of Schadenfreude?
Yep.
Okay. I'm somebody who can tell you in my life I've never been somebody who subscribes to Schadenfreude. I do not ever enjoy, ever. Well, maybe once or twice. But I would say almost 100% of the time, don't enjoy someone else going through a tough time. Because I just know it's not fun. And I know it's not okay. And I don't wish people harm. I'm a well-wisher. I'm not somebody who wishes other people harm. I wish other people well. And, I've always described the difference between people who are greedy and people who are hungry. I always want to deal with people who are hungry, putting that in economic terms. I don't want to deal with people who are greedy. Because if I'm hungry, I want to get satisfied, but I'm okay with you getting satisfied. And that,
exactly.
The next person, greedy is, I want it all.
When people are shoving their success or how great they are or how sanctimonious they are down your throat, then you're just sort of excited when they take a fall. Or I find that celebrities in particular flaunting how rich they are, how perfect their lives are, how perfect their relationships are, how romantic the gifts are, how great they get to travel, and you're watching it and you're happy for them, and people are going on the ride, but those people aren't sharing the flaws in their relationship and the flaws in their life. So then when they get snapped up, that's why the viewer and the fan is pulling them back down. I felt a responsibility when I had a reality show to share the challenges of my relationship, which were not easy. I felt like I'd taken them on this fairy tale, and I couldn't not share the nightmare too.
Bethenny, only because this is very relevant in this conversation, what I've tried to do is look at life kind of like a television series. I don't mean that the way you think I mean it. There are many shows that I really like, but I've seen pick any Friends, pick Seinfeld, pick Curb Your Enthusiasm, whatever your show of choice is, whatever that show. And if you look at what we call, and the term, run of show versus episodic, it's one way to look at life. If I look at the run of show of anybody, your name here, I look at that person and say, did they have every episode perfect? Or did they have a flaw over here or a blemish over here? And was there one episode in their life, taking the analogy of a TV show, was there one episode that I actually didn't like? And the answer is probably yes. But was I willing to write off the whole show because I didn't like one episode? No. I looked at the run of the show and I said, and I look at people this way. On the run
Yes.
of show, this person's had a good quality life and is caring and does the right things. They screwed up over here. They said something they shouldn't have. They were trying to be funny. They shouldn't have, whatever it may be. I try to look at life and say, that's how you need to examine it. And I also have a unique view of friendships. I read a great quote somewhere. I know the name of the book, but I don't know the name of the person that this quote is attributed to. But it really stuck with me. And it said, the definition of a friend is somebody that when you've made a fool of yourself doesn't think you've done a permanent job. So if
It's
somebody's
true.
your friend, I had a rabbi friend of mine once who said to me, Michael, if I find out that a friend of mine killed somebody or shot somebody, the first question may be, what did that person do to deserve it? Because I'm going to give my friend the benefit of the doubt. Now, I may
Yep.
find out my friend's a murderer, God forbid,
Right.
but my first reaction is going to be, what did that person do to deserve to get shot?
Right.
And again, if you look at life that way, it doesn't have to just be friends. If you're a celebrity that I have liked and followed and enjoyed your music, or a sports, someone in sports that I've admired your career and your accomplishments and your successes and failures, am I willing to give you the benefit of the doubt? That's really it. Do I think, as a friend or a fan, let me expand that definition. Do I think when you've done something to embarrass yourself, it's a permanent job, or is it just a bad moment? I think that's where you get into do you go all the way to cancellation, or do you get a second chance? I've always believed that we as a people, broadly, people should get a second chance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just to finish up the Peloton conversation, I love their shift, their pivot. I love their 48-hour commercial and just going where the fish are and not backing down and finding the humor and leaning into it. I tweeted today that I think that they should do something to the song by the Bee Gees, Staying Alive, like some disco spin class workout, and really lean into it for their customers and just be like, we get the joke, we're part of it. I love it.
Bethenny, when they did that commercial years ago, the couple in the apartment, and everyone said, "Oh, that's great. That's great if you're rich," or whatever.
Yeah.
I was somebody who looked at it and go, I wasn't offended by the commercial. I thought it was a perfectly fine commercial. This Sex and the City issue, that's the risk of being a celebrity. Whether you're a celebrity as a person or a brand, it's
It could go both ways. It's a rose. It has
cuts both
petals
ways.
and it cuts both ways. Okay, the last question is for small business owners or any business moguls, entrepreneurs. What are your top 3 tips for marketing, for getting your message out there, for just promoting your business or your brand or your idea?
Understand who your customer is. That's number one, first and foremost. Who are you trying to reach? How are you trying to attract them? So the who. Okay, I think you need to know that. It's no different than when we do standard media planning. You look at, first you do the research and you determine who's your customer, who do you need to reach. Second, you do the planning, which is, okay, now that I know who my customer is, I now know where I can reach them: social media, television, a billboard on the Sunset Strip or Times Square, or on Main Street, anywhere USA or anywhere in the world. And secondly, it's the execution of that. Okay, I know who I want to reach. I know where I think I have the best likelihood of reaching them. And now I have to make sure I execute it properly to deliver that message. So you have to really know who your consumer is and understand that first, because if you get that wrong, then you're going to get it wrong on where you reach them and how you reach them, right? So that's, I think, the first and foremost rule. Understand who your customer is.
Okay, and what if you only have $10,000? How are you spending it to reach this customer?
Oh gosh, it's a tough question to answer because if you're a small business in a small town, you're buying a billboard more likely on the street. That might be the best way to attract it. It's going to depend. There's too many facts and circumstances there, Bethenny, for me to give a real answer that anybody could hang their hat on, because there's too many variables in that conversation. Now, that being said, all the time in our business, when we're called in by a marketer to determine who their best agency partner is, who's the best advertising agency, one of the tests you give them generally is say, we're going to introduce a new product. We have a budget of X. How would you spend it? That's how we do it. So it's the same question you've asked. Now, the answer, reason I can't answer it here is I don't know
the product.
I don't know enough about the consumer you're trying to reach. If it's local, it's going to be one thing. If it's national, it's going to be another thing. If it's about travel, maybe it's in the airport. Maybe, there's too many variables there.
My answer would be, years ago, I remember it was the people who started Pirates Booty. They, at that time, I think it was Pirates Booty, and they had said, and this doesn't have to be about food, and it's a metaphor, what I'm about to say, but they said, we don't spend money on advertising. We want to get the product in people's mouths. And I always remembered that because it meant you just want to get people to understand what it is that you're doing, selling, what is happening, versus just spending money on some messaging that might not connect to the customer.
So look, the holy grail today, Bethenny, for a marketer is you want to make sure you reach the right person at the right time with the right message in the right context. Looking for all those things that are right.
That's good. That's good. That's what people should take their journal out and write these notes down and check all these boxes. It has been such a pleasure, and I feel like it was great takeaway for people who really listen to just garner business and marketing information.
Well, Bethenny, it was a pleasure, and it was authentic from your perspective, and I hope from mine, and I appreciate it, and I do love your reindeer.
Oh, thank you. I've been wearing a onesie. For those of you listening, I've been wearing this onesie pretty much all weekend. I have different onesies, but this one I'm really a fan of. So I appreciate you. Happy holidays, and send the same to your family, and have a wonderful New Year.
Thank you, and you as well.
So that was very interesting. I wanted to give this gift to you because I know that so many of you are business people, entrepreneurs. You have an idea, you want to be out on your own, and it's very difficult to understand exactly what to do, how to spend your time, how to spend your money, and how to market your business or idea. So I wanted to give this conversation to you to get some free advice so you can really figure out exactly how to reach your audience in the most efficient, economical manner. So I hope you enjoyed it. I think there was a lot of good takeaway that you could scribble down on a notepad and make your business a huge success. So thank you so much for listening. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe, and have a terrific day.